Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of South Asian Success. It hasn't been a long break, but I took a week of vacation, so I haven't recorded an episode in a while, but it feels very fresh today. And I have a beautiful summer day in June, and I get to talk to someone that I'm very close to, a good friend of mine, and also a new author, Dr. Keshav Grover. Hi, Keshav. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. So I'm really excited to have you because, you know, I actually started my morning with your books. It's called Wellness Bridge. And I love that, what you're talking about is really so near and dear to many South Asian readers' hearts, but also, you're getting into the grit of real kind of medicine today. And so it's a really interesting book. I actually picked it up. I started my morning with you with this and now this podcast. So it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. I'm glad that my book was able to be part of the beginning part of your day to help you kickstart a great day.
Yeah, and I have to say I didn't do the morning stretches and we'll get into this. We'll get into this. But I have every need to do those morning stretches this morning. Okay, so let's start with for everyone. Please introduce yourself. Tell us about, a little bit about your journey and what, sort of brought you to writing this book today. And then we'll get into your philosophy and all that later, but let's just get to know you a little bit as a person.
Sure. So, I'm Keshav Grover, live in Metro Detroit, Birmingham, Michigan, with my wife, Evita, and our daughter, Valora, who's 6. Practice integrative and functional medicine, love traveling. Whenever I get a chance to be in the kitchen, that's always a nice part of my day as well. We love to be outdoors, hiking, playing golf when I can. I've got a labrum tear in my left shoulder, so rehabbing that. But once that's better, I'll be back on the links. And obviously I love a good workout. I love connecting with people. And I think for me, a big part of my life is just experiences. The more experiences that I can have, the more I can interact with people. I find that that's my happy place. And then, just being a Detroit, Michigan Motor City guy, cars are also part of my passions as well, too. So, that's kind of me in a nutshell overall. And happy to talk to you guys today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like obviously I know you well as an individual, but I do
Mhm.
think I've seen this journey of sort of growth with your career. And also, I think a real fully embracing a lot of you practice what you preach, right? So tell us a little bit
Try
about
to, try
how
to as much as I can. Yeah. Yeah.
you get into
Yeah.
integrative medicine, functional medicine, kind
Yeah.
of this world. And what is your, if you can put it in a statement, what's your sort of overarching philosophy?
I think my overarching philosophy is that we have one life on this planet, and we don't know, we can't control when we start our lives, and we can't control when we end our lives. But what can we control are the days in our lives that we live, that we get to wake up every day and have an opportunity to do what we want to do. And being in the United States, I find that that is also another privilege that a lot of us get to do. Unlike if you're in another country or maybe your situation is different, I understand that. But if you do have the opportunity to do what you would like to do and you're able-bodied, able-minded, my philosophy is my not just my philosophy, but what my experience has been is that if you are able to do that, that is what brings you the most purpose and joy. And that's the biggest driving force for our well-being, is that being able to experience what you want to experience, and maybe some things that you didn't know you wanted to experience, but then you look back and say, oh, wow, I'm glad I experienced that. And that is my philosophy for everybody, that whether you're a patient of mine, a friend of mine, a family member, I want everybody to experience life to their fullest. And that can mean different things for different people, but that is really my outlook, because I find that oftentimes you talk to people in their elder years, oftentimes people will say, even if they're on their deathbed, hey, I like people will say, I regret not doing that, versus saying, I regret doing an experience, as long as it's legal and it's not like they're committing a crime or something. But in terms of like where people will want to look back at their lives and say, you know what, I have very little regret because I was able to do everything that I wanted to. And that's really what life is about to me. And how can we optimize that for every person, whether they have burden of disease or not overall?
That's wonderful. That's awesome. And I think that's a goal to subscribe to no matter who you are, where you are, what your place in life is. Because I mean, we've all seen it. And my background, obviously, I have a background in occupational ergonomics. And one of the things we always used to talk about in that field was, once we want to avoid injuries in the workplace, because ergonomics is focused on workplace injuries, so that people don't ever have them. Because once you do start to have really debilitating things happen in your life, it's often harder to reverse or come back to your full self. So I love that, kind of trying to work towards building your best self and your best health today can really make a huge difference in your quality of life.
Definitely, for sure.
So I got to dive in. I didn't get to finish the book because for everybody, I literally got my early copy about 2 days ago, and then so I had limited time, but I did actually consume as much of it as I could this morning. And so I love that you talk about your family, right? So this is South Asian success. We are all so very much rooted in family in South Asian culture. And I love that you talk about, your dad who's a medical doctor and is very
Hmm.
much kind of traditional practitioner, and then your mom, and then your uncle who had brought in so many wonderful holistic and Ayurvedic approaches to your life. So, can you just tell us a little bit for those that haven't read it yet? You
Hmm.
give really detailed, really great examples. I don't want to give those examples away, but
Yeah.
give us like a little bit of a taste of life at home during those early days.
Sure. So my dad, Sudarshan Grover, who is a phenomenal pediatrician and emergency pediatrician as well, who's still practicing in his 80s. And so he was obviously a huge driving force. We saw him helping everybody, whether it was on an airplane, in a restaurant, in his clinic. A family member calls, a patient calls, he has some answer to give them, or if he doesn't have the answer, he can connect them to somebody to help them, from performing CPR to calling an antibiotic for somebody, or diagnosing my cousin with Kawasaki disease on the phone just based on symptomatology. That was highly impressive to me as a kid. That I was like, wow, this guy can do all these things. That's kind of the direction I want to go in my life. Then my mom, Manjula Grover, the sweetest person in the world. And we kind of grew up with her mindset that, she was reared in a very religious, ceremonial household where a lot of things were ritualistic and a lot of things were like, because it was said that this remedy or this, what we call it as Hindus pujas, or this ritual would help you to do this. That was just almost like very set in stone in her mind. That, like, it's almost as equivalent as 2 + 2 = 4. That like, if you do this, it's going to have an effect. So whether that was with a cold, making us a specific tea called Banaksha, which I talk about in the book, or even like, haldi doodh, which is like, golden milk, which is turmeric and milk and some black pepper. And you can kind of jazz it up however you want. Those were things that she kind of subscribed to and would give us growing up as well if we had a cold or cough or something else was going on. And my dad would kind of, he would kind of slightly scoff at it and be like, like, this doesn't have randomized, controlled double-blind studies, and like, and he would just kind of say, whether you do this or not, it's going to take you 5 to 7 days to get better, or like, and so there was always the kind of this, and he's kind of come over more on the integrative side over time period, and I talk about that as well. Then my mom's brother, who, God rest his soul, he's no longer with us, Bridge, is his name, Bridge Mohan Chabra, Bridge Mama to us, being the mom's brother. He was a very unique individual, highly intelligent, highly goal driven. He was an engineer, electrical engineer from India, and he came to the United States, actually to Chicago, where you are, to the Illinois Institute of Technology to pursue his master's. He was introduced to a yogi by the name of Mr. Oliver Black, who was a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda through the Self-Realization Fellowship. And so his journey started quite young. Probably, I would say, I'm guessing it was in his 30s or so, when he, or late 20s, early 30s, when he met Mr. Black. And so he kind of became his disciple. Mr. Black was his guru, and there was even an ashram in northern Michigan that Mr. Black had started, and he went there to help him set it up and live there for many years too. And so he brought all that to not just our family, but our community. He taught yoga classes at our local temple. He was very involved in that. And as a result of being in a holistic mindset, he also looked at diet differently. He looked at supplementation, greens powders, all these things that we do now very commonly.
Yeah.
Like you walk into a Whole Foods You've got an
Really?
aisle of what he used to have in his house pantry because he was like buying things from a catalog or ordering things off of like, emails back in the day when like there wasn't like internet ordering and my dad would just be like, Bridge, what is all this? Like, and like they would have their back and forth. So that was kind of a snapshot, my upbringing. And then later on, of course, my brother, he's a doctor, my wife is a physician. There's a lot of that mix of conventional and holistic mindset from day one for me. So that was a big kind of, I think, driving force to how I arrived to integrative and functional medicine. And I think another part of it is that when I did my rotations, I found that in the conventional medicine rotations that were primary care, like internal medicine, family practice, I felt we never were fixing a problem. Diabetic would come in, a person with high blood pressure came in, somebody with another kind of chronic disease came in. Either we would start them on a medication, take them to a higher dose, or then add another medication. We never fixed a problem. That's kind of why in the conventional world I like the surgical world, where I was like, oh, you've got a problem, let's cut it out, or let's kind of repair it or do something that I can physically go in there and help you with. So, and that's kind of where my aesthetics practice comes into play as well, because I like that part of helping people with my hands. And also as an osteopath, we do manual medicine as well too, to help people with their myofascial issues. So that's kind of my story, how things evolved, and more of that is in the book too. But that's a snapshot overall.
Yeah, I feel like your family plays out almost a little bit more specifically in this case. And it really influences like a lot of who you are. Like I think of my family, I don't have like that traditional medicine person in my household, right? So my mom immediately would say, okay, get the haldi, dude, and
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
still do that today. When I'm sick, I
Yeah.
want ginger tea with haldi and black pepper is like what I
Yeah.
want.
Correct. Yeah.
I love that you actually see both sides and almost a third side with your uncle's yogic practice so early on to really be able to build this kind of mentality and this mindset. And congratulations on the book. So, the book is officially
Thank you.
launching August 4th, correct? Is that right,
Correct.
Jane?
Yeah.
Right.
August 4th, it goes live on Amazon and all the other retailers like Barnes and Noble. And I think there's another online distributor as well that will be able to use. But right now, it is available for pre-order through Amplify Publishing Group's bookstore. And I can send you the link to share in the show notes as well.
Yep. Great. We will share that. And
Yeah.
well, the central message, I mean, if I'm paraphrasing, and I would love for you to chime in, is kind of a little bit of what your upbringing was, right? It's like, we have health practice, we have modern medicine, and we have holistic and ancient medicine. And here's how you kind of marry the two and you let this kind of influence your daily life, right? Would you
Hmm.
say it's a good kind of analysis? But I would love to hear kind of what you think is the key takeaway for your reader.
I think the key takeaway is that, it's not either or. It's not like, either I go see my cardiologist or I, sprinkle turmeric on all my ailments and it's going to become better, right? It has to be kind of and that's where I think my traditional medical background, again, I think this is where it's a very important part of the puzzle as well, is that traditional medicine, conventional medicine, I should say, like when you think of MD or allopathic medicine, and even DO medicine, you have a lot of let's talk about cancer screening, for example, or cardiac risk evaluation. I mean, those things you can't do with yoga.
Right.
Yes, yoga can help those things. Yoga can help prevent all of those things too, or even help after an event has occurred. However, but it can't help you to screen. It can't help you to suture skin together. It can't help you to fix a fracture or relieve the brain of a bleed if somebody has a brain bleed or something more acute and life threatening. So I think that's where, it's not either or, it's more of what's the best combination for the patient and also what is in the patient's belief system and what they will do. It's oftentimes where it's just like the good old question where people ask and say, hey, what's the best gym to go to? It's the one that you're going to go to, because I can tell you, oh, go to gym X or gym Y, but like if you're like, oh, this or that, the other about it, or you just never get around to going, it's not the best one for you. So even if like somebody says, hey, I've got a couple dumbbells at home, I've got some resistance bands, and I've got a treadmill. Great. If that's what you want to use, let's create a workout routine with all of that stuff. right? So it's almost like, as a mom, you can probably relate to this, or any parent, I should say. Like if if your kid wants something to eat and you have run out of specific ingredients, but you look in your pantry and you're like, okay, what else can I kind of use to make this dish a recipe, right? I'm sure you've had those days
Yeah.
and then, and your kid is like very adamant that they want that particular dish. And of course, as a parent, you want to satisfy that wish of theirs. So, and that's innate in all of us. And then, so I think that it's almost just like that to say, okay, what do you have access to or that you're willing to have access to that may be in your means to do it financially, physically, etc. And how do we kind of like put that into your schedule? Where is that going on your schedule? Because it's also like, to quote a good friend of mine, Greg Scheinman from Midlife Mail, you know, he always says, show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities. So if it's not in your calendar, it's probably not going to happen. And I know that one of the things that I admire about you, Parl, and this is kind of also a credit to my wife too, is that you guys are very good about investing in each other's friendships and
Mhm.
in your group of friends that you guys all have, almost a sisterhood. It's almost like a sisterhood of traveling pants because you guys travel a lot too. So I feel like, you guys have a commitment to schedule it, to get it on the calendar. So then therefore it happens. So, and I think that's a big part of what we talk about in our clinic too with our patients and say, okay, put in your calendar if you need to, when you're going to take your supplements, when's that creatine going in your coffee or into your water? When is that? And I was happy to see that you showed me your coffee earlier too.
Yeah, it's my
So
that's
kudos to that. You've got your protein coffee with creatine.
yeah.
Um, and, uh, and where are all these things happening? And it doesn't have to be everything, right? It could even be just one or two things that you're scheduling, and that's where we can get the conversation started towards your well-being overall.
I love that. I mean, okay, so
Yeah.
you talked about so many things there, but no, first of all, I fully subscribe to if it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. That's like literally how I live my life. People are always like, "How do you do X, Y, and Z and do these?" It's like it's literally on my calendar, and I think using that in the framework of health and wellness is often it seems so simple, but it's often overlooked, right? You take for granted that you're just going to make it to the gym, but most likely the life or calendar will take over, right? So if you don't plan for that, even the travel time, like I always say, I got to plan for the travel time to the gym, right? And the travel time back, because those things are what get you if you have a call right after before you have work to do.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I want to dig into some of the chapters. So this morning, what really moved me is obviously I know you dive into integrative and conventional and holistic and functional medicine. So great like education for those of us that are not in this world. But I love part two because you really get into the things I think that really move people: nutrition, food and food as medicine, fasting, movement, sleep, regenerative practices, mindfulness, community. These are all, I feel like this is like speaking the language of so many people today, but we won't have time to dig into everything. But I want to talk
Yeah.
about a couple of the areas. And
Yeah.
so one is fitness and movement. I love that you have
Hmm.
a whole section on this. And I'm hoping to impart this on other people in my life that could have more fitness and movement also. Tell us about like physical health and how is it a model for not only success in whatever
Hmm.
you're trying to build, right? But preventative health.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
about.
So, it's very simple. Our body is like a piece of technology, whether that's an automobile, whether that's any kind of technology that we have. We have a hardware and we have a software, if that makes sense, right? So your hardware is being your body and your software is what powers it. So think of like an automobile.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a lemon vehicle, if you have the option?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be an F1, race car, able to win the races? And how do you fuel that vehicle? How do you make sure that you're checking up to make sure you have the best wheels, you have the best engine, you have the best, or if it's an EV vehicle, do you have, is your battery charged? Are you putting in the right fuel or the energy into the vehicle? And are you making sure that you're also looking forward from a prevention standpoint? If you like, let's say, like both of us live in cold climates most of the year. So do you have your windshield washer fluid? Is your coolant updated? Are your tires inflated? Is the tread there? Do you need winter tires? Do you need all of those things that go along? And do you have your snow scraper in your car? Like all of those things that you think about to survive, to be a successful driver in a winter climate is going to be different than what it is in a summer climate. And that's kind of like our life, where how we go through different seasons of our life. And as we age, which is a blessing. I think there's a lot of this anti-aging rhetoric that's out there. Yes, you may find that somewhere or another, even on maybe our website, it might be there because of some SEO, perspective for internet searching, but that's not really what we're talking about in our practice. We want people to age because age means experience. You don't age, you can't experience, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of inherent in that thought process. So I want people to age, but how do you age? Age well, age with vigor, age in a thriving way, in a way where then you feel the way you want to at that age, if that makes sense. And so how do you do that? Is that you have to make sure the vehicle is prepared the right way to do it. Just like when a pilot takes off, he or she is making sure that everything, there's a checklist they go through. And if they have to put a new part on and you were waiting on the runway 30 minutes extra, you wait on the runway 30 minutes extra because you want to make sure that that flight is smooth, right? Because as soon as you take off, like, I remember in my training, it was like my mentors. I remember one of my mentors said, when you sit down as the surgeon, you are the pilot. You're in the pilot seat. You've got to make sure everything is checked off. Your devices are working. Your instrumentation is correct. The site you're operating on is the one that you have to operate on. Everything you need should be there prior to you starting. And that mindset is the same in terms of well-being, in terms of you are the pilot of this vehicle. Are you doing everything to make sure this vehicle is optimized? And again, it's not about like you don't have to do 1,000 things. Like everybody will talk about like 10,000 different supplements,
Yeah, yeah.
about like going to, like there's pick what works for you and experiment how you feel with a certain few different modalities, and even talking to people like myself or another functional integrative provider to kind of help you navigate through that, almost like a GP. That's kind of what I kind of equate myself to. I'm like your GPS in the wellness world to help you to say, okay, let's go left, let's go right, there's traffic here, etc. How do you navigate around that and go from there? And I think that's, as long as you say, okay, I am committed to improvement and also maintenance, that's the first step, is just to say, okay, is to start. Because if you don't start, the car doesn't go anywhere. You got to start somewhere. So that's always my philosophy as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like also I look back on like my younger life. I was actually just thinking about this like yesterday randomly. I was thinking about how I would ebb and flow from exercise, like meaning I would have big periods of exercise. Then I would kind of have like 3 months where I didn't exercise and I would ebb and flow. And that ebb and flow got extended at periods where I remember later in life, like probably, a year of not having really good exercise habits. Although exercise has always been something that made me feel good and like movement. But now as an adult, and I love how you said like with aging we experience, I can't imagine my life without movement, right? Like I literally don't think it's easy to get through the week without it. So, but I don't think we knew and we were as educated as young people. Now, I mean, the benefit of young today is you have all this wonderful wealth of knowledge. And I feel like people are healthier in their 20s than I was in my 20s,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think if you're, 20 right now, I mean, that's 2 decades ago exactly for me now. And, where my mindset was at 20 is way different than it is now because of, excuse me, everything that we know. And I think that is, social media in a way has done a good job about sharing some of that with the younger generation so that they can benefit from it to a certain degree overall too.
Yeah, I love that. So
Yeah.
you don't have to wait till you're 40 to figure all of this out. And you can also just pick up this book and get some easier tips. You know what I liked too, and I was looking in the back chapters is you talk about routine and how to build a routine. And I think I looked at it immediately and I was like, oh, this is hard. But then you don't have to do it all at once. You can kind of piece and start with small things. Like I know last year in the summer, I had built a great habit of taking a walk every morning. And when
Hmm.
it's cold, it was harder. And so I had to the cold months, I figured out a different pivot. But in the warm months, now it's warm again, I'm trying to rebuild that habit. So maybe it's also
Yeah.
figuring out what works when you can.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about is one of our favorite topics, which is food, though, right? Because you and I are big foodies. Like, I think you and I
Hmm.
really do always relate on what we're excited to eat. We want to try
Yeah.
on the menu. But let's talk about food as you think of it in this context, also as medicine. So, kind of share a bit about that for the readers or the
So
audience.
it's interesting. Growing up, I was a kind of your typical chubby Indian kid. like I enjoyed food. I even remember my dad being a pediatrician, being concerned about my BMI, and he would ask me to start writing down calories of what I was eating and to start to kind of be a little more aware of what I was putting in my mouth. And I didn't like that because, it kind of like, you kind of felt like it was kind of a party pooper kind of mindset. But also I think that there is a how do you optimize what you're eating? And I think understanding food, not just, and I think it's talked about in the book in terms of you have your macronutrients, which are your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So we need that. We need to have all three. They all three play a role in our body. So I don't wave a particular flag and saying that I'm keto, vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, pescatarian, etc. I think people have to figure out what works for them and what is in their belief mindset as well too. But I think that we need all three of those. And then also you need your micronutrients. So the EMPs is what I talk about with my patients. So as long as you look at your plate and you can say, okay, I see my protein, I see my carbs, I see my fats, and I see my micronutrients, and usually that's in the form of colors. So you think of your greens, your reds, your purples, your berries, your things like that. As long as you're seeing those on your plate, you can say, okay, oh, there's my micronutrients as well, in terms of your antioxidants, your vitamins, your minerals, things like that. And then of course we need to be hydrated as well. So finding good water, and sometimes if you need to augment that with electrolytes like Himalayan pink salt, some lemon, honey, things like that. That's always nice to keep hydrated even throughout the summer. So that's kind of how I look at the food as medicine in terms of, because each time you put something in your mouth, you are giving your cells information. And that's technology, right? The technology that's in our cells, we're still figuring that out from a medical perspective. Just the other day, there was a discussion about a new medication that with one dose, would shut off the production of cholesterol and reduce your cholesterol for life,
What?
and it was a very, very early phase study that there was done. It was in the kind of the same PCSK9 inhibitor thought process, but still, that's an example of how we're learning still how the body's working. But going back to food, is that we all need to eat food, but how we eat the food, when we eat the food, and who we eat the food with is what we should be thinking about. So if you think about in many past lives, or even in around the world where people don't live as modern of a lifestyle as we do here in the US or other Western countries, or in countries where there's more of a corporate influence, I should say. They eat as families. They eat together. They eat fresh cooked food. They're not heating something up in a Tupperware in the microwave and calling that their dinner. They're not, doing fast food takeout or DoorDash or Uber or things like that. They're cooking their food. They're sitting down. They may say even a prayer or a grace before. They're really enjoying it. They're mindful with it. So their bodies absorb it better. They're taking their time to eat it. They're biting each bite, appreciating the flavors. And that really does make a difference in terms of, and that's what we talk about mindful eating as well with our patients, that when you eat, you should try to be mindful. So put the fork down between every bite, the spoon down between every bite as well. And that helps the food act as medicine as well, too, because now it's taking a little bit longer to digest. You're getting full a little bit better. Your satisfaction is better with the meal. All of those things are very important as well. So that's kind of food as medicine in a nutshell. Obviously, there's much more in the book and what we talk about with our patients as well.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's great. That's a great, and I love it. It's a simple like visual too that you can all just take back and look at your next meal and kind of look and think and see, does it sort of fit that?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I want to talk about the whole book. We won't have time to talk about the whole book, but what was the motivation for writing the book? Let's talk about,
Hmm.
you're building also a business and
Hmm.
kind of new kind of enterprise, new work that you've been
Hmm.
doing. What's your goal with the book? And then, we'll talk like a little bit more about maybe what you kind of feel are some of the health misconceptions out there when people look at modern health today. So those are kind of two
Sure.
areas to wrap us up here.
So the motivation for the book was that, I always wanted to do something to kind of give a tribute to my uncle. That was one. The second I would say was to help to create a voice for myself in this space that I think that oftentimes there's a lot of, And I give a lot of these physicians credit, and healthcare providers or anybody in the space that talk about maybe one topic where it's one particular diet, one supplement, one kind of mindset where it's geared towards one niche of people. But that's not my practice. In my practice, I see everybody from kids to I have a patient that is in their teenage years right now, all the way to 94 years old. I see men, I see women. I experience with the community, if that makes sense. And I wanted a book for the community. I wanted a book that anybody could pick it up and hopefully benefit from, and not necessarily be geared to, let's say men greater than 50 years old that may be struggling with, lower testosterone, or, women that were going through menopausal symptoms, or which are important topics. I'm not underrating that, but I don't just deal with that. That's part of my practice, but I deal with other issues as well with other patients. I wanted something that could resonate with everybody who picked it up. And I
Yeah.
think the other
Go ahead.
and I think the other part of it was, my practice is in a growth phase as well. And I needed a vehicle that I felt that could help people to know about us more. And I felt that a book, talking to even, the head of Amplify Publishing Group, who's become a close friend, and he kind of showed me, what was possible with book publishing. And that was, highly motivating to say that, because I didn't think I could be an author, to be very honest with you. If you asked me this 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, to say by 2026 you will have a book that is in print out, I would have said, you get out of here. This is not happening. No, this is not who I am. I'm not an author. But he kind of showed me that this is a possibility. And so, admittedly, I worked with a writing coach as well, and we would meet every week to get this done. He kept me on a deadline, which again, it was, putting that in the calendar, getting
Yeah.
back to that concept, to get the book out there. And that really helped. That really helped to keep me motivated, to keep me to know, okay, I can do this and that it can happen. Because, at the end of the day, I'm a human too. I need that coaching, and that was very instrumental to help to get this done overall.
I love that. Well, you've said two things
Yeah.
that are so wonderful. So one is like a book for everybody, and your practice really does embody that too. Like with a functional medicine practice, it's really looking at the whole body and the whole self. And like, this book is for the whole community, which I love to hear that. That's just such a great, I think it really ties into you and what you do.
Yeah.
And what you said about book publishing, like that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give. I tell you, every time I meet somebody that's at a book fair, at a literature fest, they're like, I have a book idea. I want to publish this. And I'm like, you need a schedule, right? Put yourself on
Yeah.
you can't do it. This is where you pay for coaching or you get help, but you put yourself on a schedule. Just like anything, it's a job, right? It's a job that you have to complete. So I love that you also called attention to
Yeah.
that. Now we
Yeah.
also need to put ourselves on a wellness schedule too, right? So I think that's also super important.
Yeah.
Let's just
And with that, I wanted to say congratulations to you with all your book success too. I mean, that's also been an inspiration too, to say my friends have done this, and it's a possibility. And
think,
that translates to wellness too. That when you see, actually, and I'll give another one of my example. One of my best friends is a physician. He went through a transformation, and that was impactful for me to go through my physical transformation, because I said, if he can do it, I can do it. So that's also part of this book too.
I feel the same about you. I feel like you and Vita went through your transformation. I was in a pivotal point of after having one child. And I remember after my second, I needed something. And I also took on wellness coaching to really get me into strength training, get me into really the love of sort of trying to build a more macro friendly lifestyle for eating at home as well. So I think
Hmm.
you're absolutely right. I mean, so I think this, your community, which you also have in your book, is so, so important. And,
Hmm.
your community can help you fuel your potential, but also you can learn from each other. So that's so wonderful. I was hoping to ask you, what's one sort of misconception, maybe if you could focus on the South Asian community for this group that we're in, what's kind of one common misconception that we could address today that maybe could help somebody kind of, go beyond what they've kind of grown up hearing? I have one in my mind. I want to hear one from you if you've got it. Yeah.
So, I grew up in a pretty athletic high school, and so I remember the locker room, and that was a very pivotal time where you kind of look around and you see, young men who are African American or Caucasian background, and their bodies look a certain way, right? They have muscle definition. Maybe they have a six pack early on in life, and that not only suits them athletically, but it also helps them socially. As a younger Indian male, my body type was not where it is today, or even where it was at my photo shoot a few years ago that I did, or actually now it was 5 years ago when I was 35. And I didn't know that what I have experienced later in life was possible earlier, because I always attributed to say, Indians don't look like that.
Mm,
Right? We
yes.
don't look like that. So therefore, it's not a possibility for us.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of things in my life that I thought were impossible, I have found that are possible. And a big part of that also, and I think this can happen in any country you live in, but I think we're very fortunate to live in the US, a country that is founded on the premise of opportunity, that everybody should have an opportunity. And that also that, being here, we have access to a lot of things that maybe you don't in other countries. So I think that that's something that I would like anybody who feels that this is not possible. I always think in my head, okay, the very fact that we're even using this technology over the internet, where I can see your face, you can see my face. This was not something that even even when we were born, this was probably not something that we thought we could do, right? But now this is commonplace. So many things that we do that at one point human beings didn't imagine it could be done have been done. Now, I use even with my patients the Artemis mission example, that if you can send a space shuttle around the moon and back safely, then you have a chance of getting to your health goals, just based upon probability statistics, if you think about it that way. So as long as somebody has that mindset that this is a possibility for me, because I've seen it in another way, then you can start to imagine yourself doing that. And then you say, okay, let me put on the calendar. Let me put on the calendar. And you just have to be committed to that process. It may take you a little longer. Genetics may be not on your side to get the muscle mass overnight that some other individuals have that experience with, if that's your goal. But I think that your genetics aren't your destiny always, if that makes sense.
I love that. That's like such a powerful message, because I do think that a lot of us grew up that way, or even with like older folks, they kind of feel like, oh, this is just the way I'm going to be, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
look a certain way. And so that is very empowering. And I hope that'll help folks to really understand, what is possible for themselves. So this has been such an awesome conversation. I'm so glad I got an early copy of this book and that I was able to dive in, and I'm excited to finish the rest. Every single time that we connect, I'm learning something new about health and wellness. So I appreciate this time. And I think that everyone that listens will have learned something too. So thank you so much, Keshav, for joining.
Thank you, Parl. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to our future conversations. Thank you.
Wise. So everyone will be dropping all the links into the show notes so you can check them out, and look forward to the book launching on August 4th. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to South Asian Success. If this episode resonated with you, we hope that you'll share it with a friend or someone else who could resonate with it as well. And if you love what we're doing and building, please do rate us on whatever podcast method you stream on. Any reviews will help us grow and improve this platform. And if you are interested in joining us or talking more about your journey, please be sure to reach out. Take care.